Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Karen Abrams, and I'm the Executive Director of Survivors Rising. And we're an Omaha-based nonprofit. Our mission is to uplift and amplify the voices of survivors. And tonight we're here for a wonderful workshop on mentorship. And I'm going to hand the reins over to one of our fantastic board members, Marisa Hattab, who is facilitating the evening tonight. And it's all yours, Marisa.
Excellent. Before we get started, would you mind sharing a little bit more about Survivors Rising? I know many folks joining us, this may be their first time interacting with survivors. So could you mind sharing a little bit just briefly about who Survivors Rising is and why we exist? And then after that, we'll get started.
Sure, absolutely. So we are an Omaha-based nonprofit where we focus on survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, stalking, harassment, all in the post-crisis phases of recovery. And we define post-crisis as any time after a person has left an abusive situation. And so we have a sort of two-pronged approach to the work that we're doing. Part of it is to focus on building the capacity of survivors to tell your stories your way, to do leadership development, to listen to what you say your needs are, and to help you find opportunities for connection and working together on issues that you think are important. And then the other big piece of what we do is what we call systems change. And that really focuses on legislative advocacy, helping to pass laws in the state legislature that are going to support survivors and survivorship, and helping to keep bad laws from getting passed. And another big part of that is community education. And we also work with allied organizations to help build their capacity to be survivor-centric and trauma-informed and culturally relevant in all of the work that they're doing. So that's a little bit more about us. And this is one of our events that we are doing to meet the needs that you say are important to you. So thank you, Marisa, it's all yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Hi, beautiful women and people. I can't see everyone's faces, but hello, welcome. We are so thrilled that you are joining us for the next hour and a half. We have some phenomenal women that are here just to share. Like, this is a conversation, y'all. I want us just to enjoy each other, learning from one another. This is a safe space for you to be. Although we're recording the panelist aspect of today's training, once we get to the end, there will be a Q&A session where you can just ask whatever questions. When we get to that portion, we're going to stop live streaming. We want to ensure that we are respecting the confidentiality of the participants, and we want you to feel as comfortable as possible. At the very end, after the question and answers, we'll have time for community engagement where essentially we're just going to get to know each other. So we'll go into some smaller breakout groups, maybe two, and just get to know what led you here, what your names are, and just get to know one another, because that's what this is about, building community and creating spaces for us to be and to thrive. And so I am super, 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 if you can't tell, super excited to introduce to you three beautiful women. I know you probably want to see more of my face, but I'm really going to be in the background. I am here just to facilitate the conversation, but they are really the experts. They are the ones that hold the amazing lived experiences and knowledge that we'll get to hear from. And I'm sure that as we're, listening to the panelists, you're going to say, wow, I can relate to that. That's similar. Like, there's going to be things that unite us and bring us together. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. So without further ado, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll dive right into the discussion. So we'll go in this order, ladies. We'll have Candy introduce herself, then Deshelle, and then Kyra. So Candy, would you mind sharing with us who your name, of course, how many years you've been thriving as a survivor, and what made you interested in having a conversation about the power of mentorship?
Hold on one moment.
Okay, we'll pass the baton over to Deshelle, and then we'll go to Candy, and then we'll land it with Kyra.
Okay, sorry. I think I had myself on mute. So my name is Deshelle Lee. I've been a survivor for the first type of survivor is 27 years. And the second year has been a thriving 3 years of being a survivor. And I'm happy to be on the call with you guys tonight.
Excellent. Candy, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, thank y'all so much. I'm sorry. Children. My name is Candy Zollicoffer, and I have been a survivor of sexual trauma and emotional abuse for probably 15 years.
Thank you for sharing. Would you mind also letting us know what made you interested in the conversation around mentorship?
You know, having a mentor has been very important for me in different seasons of my life. And when you are able to walk through something with someone else holding your hand, I've definitely have asked, I need someone to just hold my hand through this. And thankfully, in every season, I've been able to get connected to someone that has been able to do that. And so mentorship is definitely important for that.
Well, thank you. And then we'll pass it on to our third panelist, Kyra.
Hello, I am Kyra Ferguson, and I've been a survivor of sexual abuse for 17 years and a survivor of domestic abuse for 8 years. And the reason why I initially became interested in the mentorship program and topic is because I didn't have mentorship when I started going through my journey. So doing a lot of self-healing and noticing a lot of things that I wanted to change within myself and just wanting to get the word out and making other people comfortable about talking about what happens to them or what they're going through and their feelings and things like that. I realized that mentorship and just having someone to walk that journey with you is very important.
Thank you. We're actually going to start with you for the very first question, if you don't mind. And I want you to feel free to just share freely. There's only 3 of you, so we have plenty of time just to elaborate as much as we like or to be as brief, whatever you're most comfortable with. But you shared that you wanting to be a mentor. And, in our conversation together, I was like, actually, you're already a mentor. Like, you're doing it in your own way, in your own capacity. And you're like, dang, yeah, I guess I am. But anyways, at what point, when you reflect back on your journey of healing and moving from being a victim to a survivor, and now we're thriving and living it. But anyways, let's go back. I'm getting hyped. At what point of your journey, of your survivor journey, did you realize that mentorship was important, even if it's through the lens of you didn't have someone that could, support you? So would you mind kind of sharing what led you to realizing that it was important?
I realized that it was important because during my journey, when I did start being open about the things that were going on, a lot of people I had around me, even if they had gone through it, they hadn't really healed from it or were survivors of it. And then the ones who didn't go through it didn't understand. So I was expecting friends and family and whoever else was around me listening to walk my hand, like hold my hand and go through this journey with me, but they weren't there. They couldn't grasp the idea of what I was going through, what I needed from them. And that's when I realized that if you can connect with someone who has gone through that personally and who can walk you through your own personal journey, it's so much better than trying to beat a dead horse. To me, it seems like trying to make your mom or dad or friends listen to you repeatedly about relapses or triggers and things like that, things that they really don't really understand. So when you have that mentorship, you have someone that you could turn to that doesn't have any judgment, that doesn't have any bias, that doesn't have any opinions of you should have did this or you should have left at this time and things like that. So it becomes an open relationship with that mentor where you're able to be open about everything that, and about things that you never even realized that you needed to be open about.
That's good right there. You know, there's so much power in vulnerability. And I feel like that's a real big component of mentorship and even giving people permission to speak into your life, especially when you're at your most kind of vulnerable state. You know, when you are moving into being a survivor and getting healthier. And for me, it was um rediscovering who I was. I lost myself in the thick of my abuse. And I didn't introduce myself well, y'all. I am Marisa Hattab, and I am a survivor of domestic violence of 11 years. And I'm also, and I was sharing with the ladies, see the power of vulnerability. We met with each other for preparing for today, and we were just sharing stories. We introduced ourselves just like we did now. And it made me reflect on a time when I was just a small child. I was 2 years old. And my mother is on this call right now, and I'm sure it's going to make her reflect. But my mom was very instrumental in teaching me and my brother, was only a year older than me, so he was 3, about our private areas and what's appropriate touching. And just at the young age of 2, I had an older cousin who attempted to molest and rape me. And it was from my brother sharing with my mother that saved me. And so I too, I'm actually a survivor of sexual abuse for 30 years. So I was only 2, I'm 32 now. And so I just realized I didn't do that. But anyways, back to the topic of the power of vulnerability and transparency, and just giving people permission to speak into your life at your most vulnerable state requires courage, but it really can even lead to, us healing in the future, right? But it's not easy. And so with that, I want to pass it over to Candy, and I would just love to hear from you. At what point of your survivor journey did you realize that mentorship was important?
Thank you, Marissa. So Kiara kind of touched on it in her introduction. And really, you kind of go through life and you just try to do the best that you can. I was going through life and trying to do the best that I could with what I knew. When I shared with family members about what happened to me, some of the responses that I received was, "Oh, you said you were in the bed, you imagined it." Or, "Oh, well, he's like this, so maybe you misunderstood." And so it was really difficult to experience that at a young age and then try to carry that through my life. And so it wasn't until I started working at the Hope Center for Kids. I had volunteered there for 5 years and then went on staff for about 2 years. And Terry Schinzel, who her and her husband founded the Hope Center for Kids, she served as a mentor for all the female staff who worked there. And she used to have this group that would meet and just really speak life into us every Friday. Different leaders around the city, they would come. And I just remember these group of women just really speaking things to me that no one had ever said before. They said that I would one day just really bloom, or that I was going to roar one day, like my voice would be used in a variety of ways, and which is powerful because that's what's happening now. During that conversation, thank you. During that conversation and just having them to share further, was the first time that I ever heard about therapy. And had Terry not been intentional to talk with me and ask, "Hey, is everything okay? Are you okay?" Had she not done that, and had I not felt safe enough to talk with her, I would have not have known at that time that, one, I was in a safe space, two, that therapy was something that I could do, and that it was available to me. And I didn't realize that. And her mentorship in my life really opened the door for me to start that healing journey that I've been on all these years.
Thank you so much for sharing. And y'all, we're going to be able to, after we hear from Deshelle, we're going to be able to talk about how mentorship can be instrumental in our healing and in our liberation and our freedom as well. But before we get into that topic, Deshelle, I would just love to hear from you. At what point of your survivor journey did you realize that mentorship was important? Sorry, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted, but I want to say that I am going to say that I believe that mentoring was important at the entire the entire journey. Honestly, I think it was mentoring that actually helped me understand what kind of situation I was in, if that makes sense. I mentioned to you guys when we first had our first Zoom together and we talked about these things, but I remember having a supervisor that was an advocate for domestic violence. And what she found was best for me at that time was to educate me, because I was in a place of being in denial, where I really didn't feel like I was being abused. Like I actually felt like I was good. Like I'm like, he's never hit me, you know, I'm good. Like I just always thought I was good until she started educating me on these things. And I'm like, oh man, maybe I need to look into this and really dig deep. And I think that her bringing that education to me helped me, get out of my situation. It helped me become stronger. So I feel like that mentorship was, very essential in the beginning, if that made sense. And then also just having a mentor in times where I have like high anxiety, or if I feel like I can't handle my day. Like I remember reaching out to a mentor that I actually currently still use, which is Teen. I'm sorry, but I know that there was a time where I called her where my anxiety was very, very high, and she taught me how to do like a safety plan. I'm like, she introduced me to a safety plan because she actually went through it. So I just feel like in different seasons and different stages that we all need mentorship, and I think mentorship was just really the thing that actually pulled me out of it, by educating me on what I was going through in the cycle and how it repeats it. So I would consider mentorship being very important from the beginning and to the end, if I had to clarify on what I think mentorship was important.
Excellent. Thank you all. One of the things that I was thinking about while you were sharing, Deshelle, is when it comes to our survivor journey, there's a beginning, and then I feel like there's just like a middle. Like I don't think there's ever a point where we like arrive, because even outside of being survivors as humans, we should always try to be healthier and progress and grow. And so, I feel that even outside of being survivors, that mentorship should be essential. Like we all need someone to be available to just process with or ask questions. And hopefully we all get to a stage in our life where we're both the mentor and the mentee, because we're never too grown to receive, right? And sometimes
Right.
those who have something to offer aren't always older than us. Sometimes they're younger, sometimes they're peers. And so I think that's also something to be aware of, is there is no arriving here, right? We're all wanting to get healthier. We're all wanting to show up in better ways. And so that kind of leads me, and I'd love to start with you, Candy, into our next question, which is how did or could have. So some of us have shared the perspective of, I didn't have, a mentor who may have been a survivor. We may have had mentors, but they may not have related in our stories. And some of us did. Some of us didn't have mentors, period. So we're all kind of coming from a different perspective. But when you really reflect, I'd like you to think, how did or could have mentorship contributed to your healing journey, right? We're all complex beings. Like some of us have shared that we have multiple layers of surviving, right? Just in talking with these ladies, and I've been a part of sharing my story and being an advocate for years. And it was sharing and talking with the ladies last week where I'm like, y'all, I'm also a survivor of sexual abuse and trauma. And still to this day, when I see that person, and I was only 2, I still feel icky. I still can have, triggers, and so that comes in so many layers. And so we talked about how we realized it was important, but now I'd like us to shift and talk about how it could, or how did it, Candy, contribute to your healing, or is contributing? Some of your mentors may still be in part of your life. So, yeah.
Thank you. I would say it definitely, having mentorship definitely helped me on the healing journey, because I would say I'm probably the first one in my family who has ever taken a step beyond what what we're used to doing, not talking about it, sweeping it under the rug. Um, and I was the first one, because sexual trauma, sexual abuse has been a story, that a narrative in my family, for many years. And so for me to step outside and get a therapist, that was a big deal. And honestly, my family shunned me for it. They stopped talking to me. They would give me the cold shoulder. Um, they just weren't kind. And it was very hard to deal with, on top of having anxiety or dealing with depression. And so different mentors in my life, having them around to call at any time or text, or just, hey, can we hang out for a little bit, on top of the therapy, really helped me to stand up when I just wanted to fall apart. um, had they not been around to help me on that journey, I probably, not probably, but there were times, I really didn't want to be here anymore. And they were able to step in and talk to me, and really help me remember why I decided to go to therapy, why I decided to step outside of what my family was used to doing. It's hard when you're the first. It's hard when you're trying to push through, and you don't have that family support, or even some friends. And so it's definitely been women and peers who are not in my family who have helped me to keep going on the journey of healing.
I don't know why I'm snapping, but I'm snapping, friend, because your story, man, is so powerful. Yeah, so thank you for just sharing in such an authentic and transparent way, because all of us on this call, we're all on our own journey, and we're at our own place and our own chapters of our books, right? There's plenty of chapters. And so I'm sure there's some of us on this call that can really relate. And when it comes to our healing, and when it comes to, having the courage to even confront things that have been family norms, or things that we've minimized. Deshelle, you shared like you were in denial. You didn't even have the language for your abuse. Confronting those truths can be painful, right? And therapy can bring up some things that you didn't even realize were in you. And so, this moment right here can be therapeutic, or this moment right here could be triggering. And so I also want to make sure that, we're just aware of each other, and creating safe places. So thank you for feeling safe enough and courageous enough to share that part of your story with us, Candy. I really appreciate it. I would love to pass it to Deshelle. Would you mind sharing how did or could have mentoring contributed to your healing, your personal healing? You shared that Teen had shared with you about a safety plan. That was something that was really practical in that moment, where it's like, okay, I can actually focus in on something. And if or when it happens again, now I have something to turn to, right? So I would love to just hear from you. At what point of your journey, or how did or could have mentoring impacted your personal healing?
Okay, sorry. So you were asking, you said, how did mentoring help with my healing journey, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So basically what I've been in therapy for a while. I had to seek a couple different therapists. The first therapist that I was seeing was a male therapist, which was very great on like accountability and, calling me out on things, which was great. I needed that. But when it came down to discussing like abuse with him, he literally could not understand it from the perspective that I saw it from. So So on top of that, without him seeing it, so for example, like he would be like, hey, well, I don't think you were abused. I think that person was just selfish. And I'm like, yeah, I understand what you're saying too. Like I was open to his perspective, but I felt that I needed to still surround myself with someone that has actually been through that experience, because still he was a great therapist, but he still didn't understand that background part. So I think that's why I felt like mentoring was more successful in my healing journey, because they were able to relate to wherever I was at. So like, for example, if I was crying and I felt like overwhelmed, like that particular person knew exactly what I was going through, and they were able to walk through with me. So I feel like that mentoring piece would contribute more than therapy, honestly, because therapy, it helps you move forward. It makes you a better person. But I feel like mentoring from experience has been able to help me deal with the deep rooted things of abuse, if that makes sense. So yeah, here I
Yeah.
am healing through therapy. I'm healing through therapy, but then I also have this mentor that has experienced what I experienced. So combining those together, it's like, yeah, I'm healing, but then I also have someone that I can call that can validate my feelings. And I think that was really, really important. My therapist didn't know how to validate my feelings, but my mentor did, if that makes sense. Because my mentor knew that validating my feelings was the most important thing that I needed in any kind of breakdown. So with them just experiencing that and going through that, they were able to say, hey, Dayshell, your feelings do matter. Your emotions, they're valid. You should feel that way. You have the right to feel that way. So just having that actually helped me heal better than what it did in my therapeutic place with my therapist, if that makes sense. So if I had to be an advocate for mentoring, I would say that a person mentoring me is more valuable than paying for a therapist, because that person can give me hands-on experience of what I'm experiencing right now at that time when I need it. So that, hey, I know that I'm worthy. I know that I'm okay to feel this way. I know that I'm not crazy. And I know that I matter and my feelings matter. So in that time, I felt mentoring was more successful in my healing journey than therapeutic side.
Wow. 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 That's powerful. Um, and I'm not just saying that word loosely, but that really is. And I know your mentor who you mentioned. She has done, significant work in advocating in her own healing journey and creating healing spaces for survivors. So you found a great mentor. But not all of us may have access to a mentor that has that lens. And so I do also think it's really important that you shared about like the wraparound services that you had to, support your healing journey. You had a therapist and you had a mentor and you probably had some friends. And so there's also power in a support network, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. So thank you for sharing. Kyra, I would love to hear from you. How did mentoring or could have mentoring contributed to your healing journey? Something else I want you to think about as well is in some of our conversations, you shared with me about how from you not receiving some of the supports that you were able to be super intentional about how you showed up for others. So you can share about that as well. So I just want to give you freedom to share from any angle you would like to.
Thank you. So, from my healing journey, when I began my healing journey, I did a leap of faith on Facebook, and I talked about me being a survivor or stepping into my survivorship. And going through that journey of healing was a lone journey, lonely and long. I didn't have a mentorship. I didn't have a lot of family members who were unbiased and who actually helped me through that process. And I didn't have a lot of friends who were more interested in the actual healing that I needed. So, like, some people reached out to therapists and things like that. In the beginning of mine, I'm so used to being independent. I did everything on my own. So I didn't go to therapy at first, and I didn't have a mentorship or anything like that. So after I had my leap of faith challenge, I had a lot of people reach out to me. And before I did that leap of faith, you know that these types of things happen to people, but I didn't really grasp of how many people that it happens to. It happens to a lot more people than we think of, whether they're male or female. And during that conversation on Facebook, I had one of my Facebook friends who does my makeup. She had a teenage daughter, and her teenage daughter was going through the same exact situation I was going through with a family member. And she was live in it. They were in the middle of going through courts and things like that. And her daughter, she didn't know how to help her daughter. So with her helping her daughter, she reached out to me and told me her daughter's story, told me her perspective of it, and asked me, could I just talk to her daughter whenever she was having any type of meltdowns, or she had anxiety, or if she just needed a break after a court case or anything like that. I would talk to her. I would just be a friend. I would listen to her. And as she went on through high school, and even through college, I still just check in on her, just see how she's doing. And like, I was sharing this story with everyone on the phone call, and I didn't realize that I was being a mentor. So I realized that mentorship was important because I didn't have it. And whether I didn't have it by choice or just by the people I was surrounded, I still didn't have it. So just being able to be that to someone else, whether it was someone I didn't know, and then after that, just people will come up to me and say, hey, I seen your Leap of Faith challenge. Hey, I've had this go through, I went through this, and just being there to be able to talk to people and to be that open book for me to share my story with other people, and then they could come and tell me what they're going through and their feelings and the things that they did to cope, because it's not just a one-way street. I'm not just telling them things, they're telling me things too, so we're learning together. And so that was the most important thing of it too, is being able to be open, be there for someone, and learn from them as well.
Sorry, y'all, I got two screens up and I couldn't find my I'm like, where's my daggone mouse? It was just floating in Neverland. But thank you so much. That's super impactful as well. Because each of us, to your point, sometimes we can't control who's around us and who we have access to. And that's why Survivors Rising as an organization is really important. We want to make sure that we're creating safe spaces for survivors to come together and to meet each other, which kind of leads me to our next question, because you became something you didn't have access to, right? That's what's super, super powerful. It's like, oh, I see there's a need, and you did it on accident by just being your authentic self and standing in your truth, right? There's power in standing in our truth, because we have nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to hold guilt. So sometimes there's power in sharing your story, and that can also contribute to your healing and your liberation in others. And so I want to say thank you for your leap of faith. Hey, y'all, we should start a leap of faith challenge. She created her own, but shoot, I bet you we could all benefit from that leap of faith challenge. Okay, we're going to talk about that later. But that kind of transitions me to our next question. See, y'all been killing it. Y'all have made the transition easy for me, okay? I haven't had to work hard at it. But before I jump to that question, when I reflect on my journey, I'm really grateful when I left my abusive ex-husband for the third time, because it took me multiple times. I at least had a safe landing place with my mother. I had somewhere to live, right? Now, everything else, as far as how can I continue and barely just be hanging on, that required time and work and effort. But one of the things that I found strength in was going to a support group for, at the time they said battered women. That's what the terminology was back then. And it was a safe house. So although I wasn't staying at the house, I had access to it because I was a survivor myself. So when I would go there, there was power in a group, a collective group. There was group mentoring that was taking place. Our support group was facilitated by a trained therapist who also specialized in domestic violence. So there wasn't re-trauma occurring. Deshelle, I'm so sorry. I'm sure it was beneficial, but there was probably some daggone trauma in there too, because he wasn't validating your truth. We'll talk about that later. Y'all, you gotta plug in with us. We got all types of wisdom to drop. But there was truly power in that group mentoring, having a web of support And that's where I was educated. I was educated about emotional abuse and how emotional abuse was taking place way before I even was married, how that is what led to the verbal insults that came, and then how I was stomped down so much that I could even accept, and I didn't accept it, but I minimized the physical. And so I didn't even know what the different forms of abuse were, let alone how to identify it and call a thing a thing. And so in that group mentoring, in that support group, it helped me to identify my abuse, but it also helped me to identify how you can really tell if someone's changed. Because I'm sure some of us here, especially in the realm of domestic violence, we may have had partners who came back and said, please, I've changed. And it may have been good for a year. It may have been good for 2 weeks. It may have been good for a month. But then when it was bad, it was bad. And so I needed to know, because I was contemplating going back, I needed to know, how can I tell if someone's really changed or if I'm being played, right? That was a big one. And so that kind of leads me to my next question. Even outside of the support group, I had a phenomenal church support system and family that did believe me. So I'm grateful for that. But our fourth question is, how important is having a web of support? Because when I think about the work of Survivors Rising and what we're working to create is safe places for women and men and people in general, youth, whoever it is. There's no face of a survivor. There's many different faces, right? We come in many different packages. And so Survivors Rising is about all survivors, not just women, right? And so we want to create safe space and places for support. So I want to pass it to Dayshell, and I want you to think about how important was having a web of support, via be mentorship, therapists, family, friends, random people that are on a call with us right now who don't know us from Adam, whatever it is. How did that impact your journey, or how could it have it impacted your journey if you had access to it?
Okay, so you said being able to have access to like friends and support, right? And how
Yeah,
important
like
that
a web
is.
of support. Yeah, how important was that to your journey?
Oh gosh, this is hard. It's sort of hard for me to answer. The reason why I say that is because there wasn't always that support, right? If that makes sense. I feel like the support system that I have, it was heaven sent. I don't know. And the reason why I say that is because in the time of my abuse of leaving it, this particular person had you know, made everyone believe that I was crazy, if that makes sense. There was a time where my mom questioned my sanity as well. When I asked her for something, and she was like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Mom, like why would you say that? You know, why would you ask me am I okay?" But later on down the road, though, she came back and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I should have just believed you." You know, like he had enough power to, you know, make everyone believe this narrative about me. So it was hard. So a lot of that in the beginning I had to go through myself. But then as I began to like come out of that, there has been people that I don't know how they begin to see the truth, but that's when I got like all of my friends that are like really supportive now. Because I mean, I don't know how they're able to identify the truth, but I think that web of support takes time. I don't think it's something that I was just given at first. Like it took time, but it's extremely important to have them when, you know, when I'm feeling down or, you know, just helping, like even currently, like they help me, they remind me that, you know, that that I shouldn't go back, or they'll help me understand like this is one of those conversations that they keep me, you know, like on the right path. Like this is why you're not communicating with me, you know, like, and just help having that support. So I think it's really, you know, it's really vital that I have that support. I think why I like this, why I think it's so valuable is because I didn't have it at first. So now it's so much value in it. It's like, oh my gosh, if I would have had these people in the beginning, I just felt like I sort of would have wasted their time because I was going back and forth. But now it's like they came at the right time when I was like, I'm done and I'm seriously done. And, if it wasn't for them, I don't think that I would stay out of it, honestly. So I think it's huge. I'm thankful mine came at the end instead of the beginning, because I think they would have lost trust in me. So yeah.
That's powerful. How are you going to just end with a bomb like that? They would have left trust in me, because
Yeah.
that right there within itself. Okay, let me ask you that. I'm going to go off script, y'all, and I know you're cool with it because we talked about that. So when you say if they would have come at the beginning, and I'd like to say, everyone, the beginning doesn't have to mean the first 2 weeks. The beginning doesn't have to mean the first year. The beginning could just be our awakening of what the truth of our trauma was, right? Some of us may be 10 years outside of the moments where we were being abused, but it could be our beginning because we're just becoming aware of our truth. We are no longer in denial. We're beginning to call a thing. I'm 30 years old and I just realized I'm a daggone survivor of sexual abuse. And I knew that was a part of my story. I have shared it, but I never put two and two together. And so I did just want to say our beginning has no number, has no time, has no years. It's just when we're awakened to what has the truth of our experience. And so I do want to ask you, you said if they had come at the beginning of your journey, they would have lost trust in you. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, because oh man. So I mean, when I guess I told you guys I was in denial in that time. So, you just don't. It's hard. It's hard. Like if other people see it and you don't see it, it's hard. So, um, I had to butt my head a couple times before I got the support group. Like I went back. Like I believed everything he said. He was able, he studied me. He knew exactly what I wanted. He knew how to buy me back in. He knew what to say to me. He knows everything about me, obviously, so it was hard to actually get away from that. So I think that if I had a support system that wanted the best for me, and I kept going back, I really felt like they would lose trust in me. And I'm thankful that they didn't have to teeter tap back and forth with me, because I went back a lot. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to women who are abused. Like, we go back because we don't have that security and that foundation. And in my situation, what he had done is he had turned the people close to me against me. So it was hard for me to get out of that. It's like they would say, "Hey, go back to him. He's a great guy. He's amazing." And I'm like, "But you guys don't understand that." Like, and I think that people, with being a mentor, I want to help people understand. Like, there's times where people go back and you cannot be mad at them. The only thing you can do is be a support for them, because they don't know how to really handle things on their own. Like, they've been molded into like a puppet for someone. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it seems like it's weird, like it can never happen to you, but you you don't really understand it. You don't really understand it until it's you. And that's why I'm always careful about when I say, like, that can never be me or that can never happen to me, because the whole time it was happening to me. And I didn't know that. And it's hard to say
Yeah.
that it takes a lot of, I was prideful. I didn't want to say that I was abused. I literally was in denial. I'm like, he's never touched me. So what are y'all talking about? But literally, he had control over me. So yeah, there was times where I went back, and I'm glad that I did not have my friends that were my support system at that time, because they would never understand that. They would not be able to understand that, where I'm coming from, if I go back and I just told them everything that was just happening to me. But it's something you become immune to it. And I think, like, if someone really wants to understand someone that has been abused, I would tell them to take a step back and allow that person to go through the process that they have to go through. It's a process. It does not happen overnight. The person knows everything to bring you back in. And if you love that person, you literally have to stick it out with them. I mean, that's what I mean when I say, in the beginning is, you know, wherever he's still allowed to pull me back in is the beginning, until I'm able to see, how to get out of that. And if you don't know the proper education and the terms on what kind of abuse you are dealing with, then you literally don't know that you're getting abused. Just like a lot of people are saying red flags. Well, those red flags seem great to me, because I wanted to be loved. So when a person was being over controlling of me, I thought that he loved me. So I thought that's what love looked like. So that, like, I don't blame myself for that. It's just like these are things that happen and you just have to educate yourself. So it is
Can I
what it is.
piggyback off of that?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
So with my domestic abuse, it was a lot of gaslighting. So once you do get that support system, they let you know that your reality is real. So when you don't have that support system, you're going off of his reality or your abuser's reality, whether it's a female or a male, and they're telling you you're crazy. They're telling you this didn't happen and that happened like this, or it's that gaslighting effect that they have on you, that narcissistic, that gaslighting effect. So you have these support systems, whether you have them in the beginning or the end or the middle, but the support system, they help you realize what your reality is, that your reality is your reality and you're telling the truth. Your feelings are validated. You are
Mhm.
okay. You're going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. Your support system is just that, because if you don't have that, then you're continuously going back, or you're continuously questioning yourself. You're continuously blaming yourself. You're continuously being miseducated. Like Daisha said before she had mentoring, she didn't have that education. I didn't have that education until I decided to take my leap of faith, And when I did start seeing a therapist, I was in my 30s by the time I finally started seeing a therapist. And that support system, whether it's a therapist, mentoring, or a group of people who have gone through what you've gone through, or just, and then it doesn't even have to be someone that's gone through what you've gone through. It could be someone who just can understand what you're going through, but they just have to understand that your reality is your reality and not be dismissive. So that's one of the things that I think is important in your support group.
I mean, Candy, ma'am, what we gonna say? Because I'm still chewing on all the wisdom. So I'm like, okay, Candy, what you about to say? Because I done wrote some notes down. Okay, so Candy, let's hear from you. What you gonna say, girl?
Oh my gosh. You know, when y'all were talking, the thought came to my mind about my web of support. And I when the abuse happened, the first time, um, I went into this bubble. I went into a bubble. I isolated myself. Um, I just felt like that was the only way I could keep myself safe, because the adults in my life were not looking to support me or help me in any kind of way. There was actually blame put on me. And so, with that isolation, again, when I talked about my story in the beginning, I carried that with me. And I didn't realize, now I'm in my late 30s, that isolation really, it formed this gap. It formed a gap in my learning when it comes to how to be in healthy relationships, how to be a wife, how to parent. Um, I didn't learn those things. I isolated myself to the point where you just couldn't speak into my life about those things, because I was so scared. I was so scared that I was going to mess up my future children, or mess up a marriage, because of the things that I saw being presented to me on a very regular basis, with abuse, domestic abuse, and having the sexual trauma as well, which I didn't know. Also, that I didn't even know what boundaries were. I thought I knew what boundaries were. I didn't know what boundaries were. And having that web of support, when I realized that, I just was able to look back in different periods of my life where, oh my goodness, different people have violated my boundaries in different ways. I didn't even know it, because one was isolated. I isolated myself, but also, there was that part of me that just really wanted to feel accepted, to feel, validated. And so when I came to realize that, Deshelle, you mentioned that some of your web of support, they were like heaven sent. And I said earlier in our talk that different seasons of my life, I've had people come on board and just really step in and fill in the gap of what I didn't know to and what I needed to know, and physically just tear down the foundation that I had and help me to rebuild. And I'm still having that experience. I have an amazing woman in my life now who is on this call, who has filled in the gap. She stepped in to fill in the gap. Oh God, I cry, but she's done that for me. And different women in my life have been able to do that. Um, yeah, I'm just very, very thankful um, for the different web of support in the different areas of my life where I needed that help to be a be a good parent, be a good wife, to recognize boundaries, and even now teaching my kids about boundaries, and different, like really taking it another notch to teach them about boundaries, because I did not have healthy boundaries and allowed other people to violate those boundaries all the time. Didn't even know. So yeah, you need those people. They fill in the gaps. They fill in the gaps so that you can fall apart if you need to. They fill it in.
I feel like I'm in church. I'm in a healing retreat. I'm saying amen. I'm snapping like I'm at y'all are just, man, y'all are just blessing me, you know. And one of the things that I would like to say in the amazing wisdom that has been shared, I told y'all these panelists are dope, like so phenomenal. Thank you. Um, each of them had to be open and willing at some part of their journey, right? Candy, I really like how you shared about, and I feel all survivors could agree to some level in our journey of surviving. There was a period of isolation. That's one of the tactics, whether it was self-inflicted or we were manipulated into it, right? Most of it was manipulated into our silence or manipulated into our isolation. And so one of the ways to combat staying as a victim and moving into being a survivor and a thriver is positioning ourselves to receive. And that is really hard, you know, especially when we have had people violate our trust, violate our boundaries, and violate even our trust with ourselves, you know, trusting the decisions we make because we keep going back to them or whatever it is. And so I feel that by having an open posture is a way that mentorship can come in to actually influence and help us. And so before we go into our breakout sessions, there's one final question that I want to ask each of you. And just for the sake of time, we only have about 6 minutes left of our panel discussion. It's gone by so fast. How would you, and Candy, we can just start with you since you know, were the last one to speak, and then we can go to Kyra and then finish with Deshelle. And you can just go in that order. I won't give you introductions. Why should survivors become mentors? And why should some survivors position themselves to receive as a mentee? And some of us have already kind of talked about it, right, today. But if you want to just add any final words to it, now's the time.
Well, I would say that a survivor should become a mentor so that you can help someone else to find their voice. Sharing our story, people can resonate with that, and it can help them to get to a place of vulnerability to say, hey, this happened to me, or I'm getting from here to there. I don't know how to get started. You know, help me to even start. And then being able to receive, when you talked, you know, we talked about the isolation and lack of trusting yourself and trusting other people. You do almost have to take like a leap of faith, as that's been mentioned, that hey, I can trust myself to make a healthy decision for my life. And I can have hope to believe that there's something better beyond what I've experienced. And so it is a faith walk. It is taking a risk to allow yourself to open up and receive help from other people, especially if help has been manipulated, or in my case, help is if you receive help, then it's used against you because you needed the help. So it's being able to identify who can be safe for me, and having that mentor can really help you to filter through who can be safe for me and who is not, until you can gain the confidence to decipher for yourself.
Thank you.
I think survivors becoming mentors is important because it's our walk of life, our journey in life we're always walking it. We're always learning from it. So especially with social media and the things of the way of the world now, we're learning different types of things. There's new types of abuse. There's new types of bullying and things like that. So when you're meeting different survivors of different things, you're still educated on what you can be helping others on. So it's an ever-ending learning process and healing process that you're going through in your own journey. And then I think it's important for survivors to be open to being mentored. It's the same thing. You still get that education behind it, but then you also get you for me, in my opinion, I feel like the abuse was the worst that could happen. So you opening up to someone who's gone through this journey and who's walking through this journey with you can't get any worse than the abuse. So you really don't have anything to lose. You're walking that journey with someone, with different people, and you're building your support. It's just like I'm an accountant, so it's just like you're building your portfolio and you have this different ways of income and you have all this different stuff coming in money wise. Never have one source of income, never have one source of backup or support. You have multiple of support, multiple streams of support coming in. And then, like Candy said, if you have to break down the fall, you could break down the fall different ways. One day you might break down on your knees, and one day you might break down on your back, and one day you're just standing alone. So it's always good to have different ways of support in your life.
Thank you. And then finally, Deschelle.
All right. So I think I touched on a lot already about why survivors should be mentors. The reason why is because I feel like they can be hands-on with you. So I'll just give you guys a quick example, right? So if I was mentoring someone that was like, hey, my mom doesn't believe me, then I would be able to give them like an experience on like, hey, this happened to me before. And eventually over time, your mom sees that, the truth. So, you just got to keep pushing until that comes. So I guess the experience, is more beneficial in my opinion to mentoring. Like for a survivor, I think that in my experience that mentoring has been more successful than anything. So that's why I feel like survivors should be a mentor. The other part is let's see, you were asking us about what was the second part of that? I'm sorry, I thought I wrote that down. The second part of
You're fine. The question was just why should people be open to being a mentor or to receive as a mentee? And I feel like you addressed that.
well, but I just want to add to, I guess, all of it is just basically giving yourself permission to trust again. Because I think we get into this place of like, I'm never going to trust again. I'm never going to love again. I'm not going to let anyone love me. I got this wall up. I think sometimes we have to really think about giving ourselves permission to be loved. Like, it's like we don't feel like worthy enough to allow someone in. And what I'm learning with myself, because I made myself like a freedom list, is just basically like giving myself permission to to receive something from someone. Like even mentorship, you have to, it's like you give yourself permission. I don't know, but it's weird. But I have to I have to give myself permission for everything because I feel like everything was taken from me. So now I'm like,
Yeah.
like, hey, don't wait. You're worthy to be loved. Give yourself permission to be loved. Like it's like you're taking your power back by giving yourself permission. Like, oh, I give myself permission to have a mentor. Oh, I give myself permission to make this choice on my own, or I give myself to be in charge of my finances now, or just little things, because I feel like we get this power taken away from us, and we have to actually go into this place of giving ourselves permission to be loved, like giving ourselves permission to be amazing, to be great. And it's like we always wanted this person to validate that, but really in reality we already have it in us. It's just like, give yourself permission, take yourself on a date, like see how awesome you are. And I've just been in this stage in my life where I'm just like, I'm giving myself permission. Like, I'm giving myself permission to be great. Like, I'm giving myself to have my permission to have my power back. Like, I'm making my own choices, So it's just this place of, I give yourself permission to have a mentor. Like, I want a mentor. I want to be better than I was yesterday. So I guess like just giving people permission to love you and giving yourself permission to have a good support system. Like, you deserve those people. And I don't know, just that's how I feel about, being open to mentoring, is just giving myself permission to say, hey, you deserve that person that's going to love you, and be able to walk through with you and understand you. And, sometimes we don't have that, but once we have it, it's, there's nothing but up from there, it's just flourishing from there.
Y'all are so dope. Thank you so much, truly. For those who've been tuning in with us via social media, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for just hearing our stories. I hope that you consider coming and being a part of our mentoring mixers. But right now, our time with you on social media platforms are coming to a close. I hope you have a great night.